Yeah, baby. Here we are, Mike and Andy today at the Vox World headquarters, Brea, California. It feels a little bit like autumn. We're recording this on a Thursday in September 2016, and the temperature is actually under 80 degrees, and we love it. For those of you that live in other parts of the world, you would call this a beautiful summer day. For us, it is fall. I'm here not only with Andy, because we've realized that we need to kind of water down Andy's influence. So we're going to start bringing more guests here. So we're here with our friend Izzy.
Hey, kids.
Izzy Ray. It's I-Z-Z-I. Mm-hmm. So it's not only spelled the same backward and forward, but upside down, it's spelled the same. So I love that.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that's called.
If you read top to bottom, with words.
It's exciting stuff.
So Izzy Ray is a friend of ours. She's part of our little Vox church community. She is our resident artist, but more than that, she is a pastor and leader on our team. Izzy Ray is, you're 20, correct? Mm-hmm. When do you turn 21? March. So in March, what day? My birthday's in March.
29th.
Oh, I'm 22nd. Oh. So you know what we'll do on the 29th?
Joint B-Day.
We're gonna have a Coors Light together. Oh. It's gonna be awesome.
Can't wait.
So yes. In fact, you can go buy it that night.
I know. I'll pick it up on the way here.
It'll be good.
For what it's worth, I'm glad we finally have the true voice of the millennials in the room.
Yes, you're welcome. I am a millennial. Now Izzy is a recording artist. And so she's got some great creative angst and awkwardness that we absolutely adore. She's a thorough introvert, and we thought, ooh, what better place to have her share a bit than on a podcast. So no one can see her; she's totally hidden from view. But if she's on YouTube and she's on iTunes, and there you go. So Izzy Ray, but more than that, she's just a friend of ours, and we're talking about church stuff today. And we thought, hey, we'd love Izzy's perspective, because I'm here representing the 30-somethings. Andy here is representing the 40-somethings. And so it's nice to have a 20-something here as well. So our bit of let's see, fodder, we'll call it, for today, came in the form of somebody sent me a link to this. And I'm sure it's been something that's been floating around the last couple of years, but I thought it was interesting. It was called "Dear Church, Here's Why People Are Really Leaving You," and it's by a guy named John Pavlovitz. I'm going to say it's Pavlovitz, and
it could be a silent V or silent L there.
Yep,
who knows?
John. So we'll call him John P. And I have no date on this other than, I just thought it was sort of interesting. One of the very big reasons that we started a little church community out of this podcast is that it is so easy to complain about the state of the church. It's so easy to point out, its flaws. It's so easy to complain about all the ways it falls short of what it should be. And I find myself guilty of, being cynical and being bitter. As I've hurt people as part of a church, and I've been hurt by people in church. And so an article like this could very easily turn into just more bashing. I don't want to do that. I don't want to bash for the sake of bashing. I want to talk about it for the sake of what's the alternative look like? Because here's what I firmly believe, that we in the American expression of evangelicalism suffer from a colossal lack of imagination about what church is, what church could be, what gatherings are. And so we felt like if we were really going to do a podcast that was talking about all sorts of cultural issues, but also talking about the subculture that sometimes true Christianity needs to be separated from, we needed to not just criticize, but to create. And so Vox community was our attempt to say, okay, well, here's a marginal attempt to try to create something. So it's with that heart of because there's so much love for the Church of Jesus that we come and we want to respond to this article. Some in agreement, some not in agreement. This is one time where I'd really be curious for those of you who are listening, why, and if you've left the church or you know people who have, what was the reason? What was the real reason? Mm-hmm. I'd love to know. Because I mean, there are all sorts of statistics. And I've got books full of, hey, millennials are leaving the church, and people after they graduate high school and youth group, you know, they don't come back. And if they do, they're in their 30s. And, you know, you have all of this kind of the sky's falling sort of stuff. But I'm really interested because this guy gets very specific about why. So here's his lead up. So Izzy, chime in whenever you'd like. Andy, chime in very little. And it'll be great.
The power of my comments will be like a mustard seed.
Yeah, that just kind of
it takes
this over
entire mountain
takes over
of
the
a podcast.
whole podcast. Oh, so here it is, dear church. Here's why people are really leaving you. He starts, being on the other side of the exodus sucks, don't it? I see the panic on your face, church. I know the internal terror as you see the statistics and hear the stories and scan the exit polls. I see you desperately scrambling to do damage control for the fence sitters, manufacture passion from the shrinking faithful, and I want to help you. You may think you know why people are leaving you, but I'm not sure you do. You think it's because the culture out there is so lost, perverse, so beyond help that we're walking away, or you believe that people are leaving because they've turned a deaf ear to the voice of God, chasing money, sex, and material things. You think that the gays, the Muslims, and the atheists, and the pop stars have so screwed up the morality of the world that everyone is abandoning faith in droves. But he says, John P. says, but those aren't the reasons people are leaving you. They aren't the problem, church. You're the problem. And then he gives 5 ways. And so I want to engage with these not from a place of bitterness or cynicism, but from a place of, hey, I wonder if our imagination isn't as wide and broad as it should be when it comes to some of these things. So where's the truth in this? And if some of you out there listening would be willing to share a bit of your journey, I'd absolutely love to hear this. So you can email me at mike@voxoc.com, or you can put it on a Facebook page, or info@voxoc.com,
or hello@voxpodcast.com.
What?
Ooh.
Well, we have a new website that's coming.
It's coming.
Vox Podcast. Subversive Kingdom is just too much, too muddy. Mm-hmm. So we're going to voxpodcast.com. Mm-hmm. And then what did you say the address was?
hello@voxpodcast.com.
That's awful, because first of all, that could be Adele or Lionel Richie. And we got to specify which it is. Hello, it's me at voxpodcast.com, or hello,
strangely appropriate,
it's me you're looking for.
I don't know. I kind of like the simplicity
internet.
of it.
Hello, internet. I don't say that anymore. I've gone away from that. I've changed it. All right, now. So he says.
I did hear that. Yeah.
He says. Here are 5 reasons. He says, your Sunday productions have worn thin. You speak in a foreign language. Your vision can't see past your buildings. You choose lousy battles. Your love doesn't look like love. And then he's got some stuff towards the end that we'll talk about. But I'd love to go through kind of one of these at a time and see how far we get. Your Sunday productions have worn thin. Now, all 3 of us are involved in Sunday productions. Mm-hmm. So I teach. Izzy leads worship. Andy runs the production of and the coordination of Sunday. So we all have a vested interest in this sort of conversation. But here's what he says, and then let's react to it. The stage and the lights and the bands and the video screens have all just become white noise. I don't know why he has to make it racial. Have all just become white noise to those really seeking to encounter God. They're eye and ear candy for an hour, but they have so little relevance in people's daily lives that more and more of them are taking a pass. Yeah, the songs are cool, and yeah, the show is great, but ultimately Sunday morning isn't really making a difference on Tuesday afternoon or Thursday evening when people are wrestling with the awkward, messy, painful stuff in the trenches of life, the places where rock shows don't help. We can be entertained anywhere until you give us something more than a Christian-themed performance piece, something that allows us space and breath and conversation and relationship. Many of us are going to sleep in and stay away. All right, Andy, Izzy, what's your first initial reaction to that statement?
I've experienced all of that.
You have?
Yeah.
In what way?
In the way of it is so overly focused on the production where we miss like the authenticity of what we're actually supposed to be doing.
Right.
And we'll do hours of run throughs of transitions and all these things, and then you get scripted prayers and all these things that you're like, wait, what are we doing? Why are we focusing on all these things? And it gets so watered down after that when you focus so much on the show side and the lights and the smoke machine and everything.
Oh, I love the smoke machine. The
It's a
Spirit,
lot.
the Holy Spirit's there when the smoke
when it
machine's
creeps
going.
in,
Oh yeah.
it's time.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's thriller. Now, so you've been in places where they script the prayers, the transitions, even to the second,
Yeah.
kind of thing. What do you think sits behind that? Like, why has that become a very important thing in some forms of the American church? Why is that such a big deal?
I think people just love having control over everything. I think,
Okay.
And I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe it's like they're a little bit scared of what could happen. I don't know. I always was so confused by that. But I kind of was like, why are we controlling everything? Like, that's the beauty of like what we're gathering. Like, there's such mystery there. I don't want to like restrict that.
So it removes mystery to
Yeah.
do that. What do you think, Andy?
I think you can't capitalize on mystery. It's like
If you've got it nailed.
Yeah, if you got it nailed down. I mean, when hundreds of churches are looking at each other for high attendance and people that are showing and that they're giving, then you model, and then you continue that model, and then because if you think minute by minute, well, here's our scheduled services, this is how much time we have. Well, you don't want to waste a minute. If you could put something in there that seems, effective in the industrial model of what church looks like in our modern day.
Right.
So it's like in so many conversations I've been a part of the production side, it's like you try to work out all these minutes, like, well, let's do this kind of prayer, or let's add this in, or, oh, that'll really work this well this week because this thing happened. There's this whole other conversation in the background about manipulation, understanding the psychology of people's emotions sitting in the seats. Well, let's really work this kind of song in because this is kind of where we're going, and this might look like what the response is. Now, on the surface, there's been plenty of conversation of call-outs of like, well, yeah, all that works, so then people feel like that's the thing they're part of, so they give more to it, and then the thing keeps generating more cash, and then people keep having jobs, and it's really a very capitalistic kind of venture.
All right, so your read on it is the professional excellence is necessary because churches are competing with each other for attenders.
Yep.
And competing with whatever the world is offering. And no one's going to sit, no one goes, big crowds do not go to coffee houses. They go to arenas for concerts.
Right.
Now, if this is true, do you agree people are leaving for this reason?
In my experience, I've had tons of conversations where that is what's tired, is that very thing. My other observation is that the coming and current generation of connectivity also kind of says something about this too, though, because church is kind of the last place where, and rock concerts actually trump this in a way, and I'll explain why, but church is kind of the last place where you sit in a seat and the actual interaction for the person sitting in the seat is completely deemed and controlled by who's on the stage. It's not a connectivity environment where you would be posting, sharing, tweeting, retweeting, having these moments of instant connectivity where you feel like it goes beyond just what's in that actual moment. And it's really because that's just where culture has gone. In any type of entertainment arena you enter into, you kind of go into it knowing that that's going to be a role. You go to a concert and you're like, oh, I'm tweeting about it, this is amazing, or I'm on Snapchat and I'm taking pictures of it, or I'm on Instagram and letting everyone know where I'm at and this is what I'm experiencing and what I'm doing. People are doing it in the church sphere, but it's in such a way that actually seems to hurt the whole idea of church in itself. It's like, why is church a place where you do that? That's what you do at concerts. That's what you do at other places where you're being entertained. It has this whole irony to it. So, and I think that that generation has sniffed that out, and it's lost. That authenticity has become really dry, and so
you agree with that, Izzy?
Yeah, it doesn't feel real, and so you're sitting there and you're like, you're trying to be relevant and like reach me, but you're faking it, and I can just see right through that,
Right. It's
not authentic.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things, because I've been on both sides of this. I've been, in places where you and I'm a huge fan of production values. I mean, I think if you're going to do something, do it well. I mean, we're not, we don't, totally. we're not going to have people up there that are horrible communicators and they're not gifted, or people up there that aren't gifted musically. So there's some sort of balance, of course. But the thing I hear in this is I hear the sameness of it all. It's all the same songs. It's all the same beautiful people. I saw an ad yesterday for an EP that was coming out from a worship band, and it's just it could have been done anywhere in the country with any church. That's it's like there's just this sameness to it all.
Yeah, I had last year I visited my parents' church on the East Coast. And I sat there so frustrated because it was like I could call every single shot. I'm sitting there. Yeah, I'm like, this is what's next. Here's how this is going to go. And just line by line by everything. I walked away so just like I'm on the other side of the country.
Right.
And it's like this is a whole different city. I'm like the context, the culture, and the texture of this people here is so different than my hometown, and yet the way that we express and the way we approach God completely lacks that personality.
Right.
And it was so like just removed all the air out of me from it. I'm like, it was this huge state of exhaustion. I was so frustrated.
Yeah, I see. Sorry, Izzy, go ahead.
No.
No, you go.
I was agreeing.
Oh, you were agreeing.
I was
So there's a lot of that Andy does when I talk. So that's totally welcome here.
Now I'm getting the ums.
Yeah.
I know, which is again
the
just
dynamic
another.
is
Your plan is
changing.
not working.
No, shoot, it is not. And people legitimately come up to me like you're mean to Andy, like they're legitimately concerned. And I'm like, first of all, yes, I am, and secondly, he deserves it. So that's absolutely no. The thing I see in this, and I've wondered myself sometimes, I just think I think perhaps in our quest for relevance and excellence, which are good things in and of themselves, we may have baptized some at least neutral, like non-biblical ideas or anti-biblical ideas. One of the books I read that was most convicting to me was a book called The McDonaldization of the Church. And the guy was arguing that the values, efficiency, control, productivity, the values that drive a McDonald's franchise to be the same everywhere are the same values the church has embraced, at least in its mega church incarnations. And I was like, whoa, I think there's something. And so for me, I want to talk about the cost of that, because everything's trade-offs. Because we could just say, okay, well, we're just going to be spontaneous. I'm not going to plan a sermon. We're not going to plan a story. We're not going to plan a set list. We're just going to show up and see what the Spirit does. Yeah. And there are some communities that do that. Yeah. Absolutely. But there are trade-offs either direction. So let's talk about the trade-offs. If you embrace the control value, the efficiency value, the excellence value, what's the cost? And one of the costs you've already said is you lose mystery and wonder. You lose potentially. There's nothing that on our side isn't explainable because we planned it, from the lighting cues to when the smoke's released to, hey, we think this really well told story is going to be an emotional peak here, and it's this. And I think God can use it all. Obviously, He does. He does. But the thing to me that I think has learned to great was I read a tweet from a guy named John Tyson, who's a pastor in New York, and it was beautiful. He said, "Hey," and I'm Mike-izing him. I think he's
paramiking.
He's paramiking is for sure. But he said, we don't have any awesome worship. We don't have any rockin' killer, sermons. We just have the Word of God, the people of God, and the Eucharist. That's what we've got to offer. And I was like, that's it. That makes me hungry in ways, just hearing about we're starting a new series on X, Y, and Z, and you can text in your this, and then we're going to have this amazing and you just, the whole hype of it. And so there's this adrenalized, we're teaching people to run their Christian life on adrenaline, the big crowd, the emotional moment, and we're not teaching them to run their Christian life on the ordinary, mundane stuff of running errands and returning phone calls or texts, of conflict with your roommate. No one's learning how to do Jesus work there we're just learning to do Jesus work when it's all hypey and we're all in a big room and it's all just amazing. And I love those experiences. I love being a part of those. They're they're memorable. They change lives. But there's no counterbalance to it. We're not teaching, people aren't learning to do Jesus stuff in non-adrenalized environments.
Well, it explains also, I think, the issue where when people go out and try to do ministry or they're coming up with an idea to do it and it's like, well, it doesn't feel big enough. Or if it's not big enough, then it's not worth it.
Right.
You know, and it forces us to think of how we make ourselves, make our thing bigger, make our dreams bigger, make our desires and wants bigger. Right. And which seems to me completely unbiblical, you know, where we're called to be weak and called to be small so that, you know, Christ can be big. So it's like that's...
Yeah. And I think there are legitimate movements that explode into bigness. Yeah. Because of the move of God, the inexplicable favor of God, the right combination of whatever number of factors. So this isn't about big or small as much as it is about what we believe that gathering is to be about.
Yeah.
And I think that there is, and I feel it. There's this pressure to fit into the sameness of kind of the American church culture, at least in its white version, because you've got Hillsong out there, you've got just Instagram pictures of big rooms and hands raised and loads of young people, and you're like, I kind of want to be a part of that. But you're onto something, Andy, and I hate to admit it, but you said a word there that I think this really, like, this is the deep piece here. And it's our lack of comfort with weakness. So we have been trained to project strength and success, and it's all. I mean, and we can jazz it up and we can pretend, but the truth of it is, it's all about your platform, your followers, your attendance, what your budget is. I mean, really, that's pastors can say it's not that, but if small pastors are complaining, small church pastors are complaining about large church pastors, it's usually out of envy, because they'd love to do it, and all big church pastors do are just compare how big their churches are, and that's the reason why small church pastors never speak at conferences. And it's the lamest thing, but there's a deep theology here that I want to talk about, because I read a book years ago called Power, Weakness, and the Tabernacling of God. All right, so that's not a friendly title, but it's by a woman named Marva Dawn. And I was at a time in my life when I was really limping. I was struggling with the depression and anxiety. I'd taken some medication. I'd gained a bunch of weight. I was just feeling we just found out our youngest son was going to have Down syndrome, and I was just, and the church I was with was exploding. It was, and I just was living in this juxtaposition of personally so weak, and yet professionally, or however you want to measure it, just was supposed to be awesome. And I came across this book, and at the core of her book, she takes on the verse where Paul, there, if you're not familiar with this particular story, there's a missionary named Paul who writes to a church, and that church is super impressed with other people than Paul. Paul is kind of like the founder of the church, but there are these, they're called super apostles. And these are people that are more winsome, better speakers. Paul, evidently we get from his writings, he's a thunderous writer, but in person he wasn't all that awesome. So the church had been splitting over personalities. Imagine that, shocking. Some preferred one person, some preferred another person. And then Paul writes he writes several letters to them. We have two of them called 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. And in 2 Corinthians, he begins to take on the church's fixation with greatness. And he says, hey, here's all my qualifications, but I think all of those are ridiculous. Instead, I will boast about my weakness. And he talks about being shipwrecked, and he talks about being flogged, and he talks about being, put stoned outside of the city gates. I mean, he starts boasting about his weakness, and then he kind of transitions into this weird I've like had visions and I've been taken up to the third heaven, but to keep me humble in the midst of all this, God, he said, he doesn't say God, there was given to me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan. Now, I don't know if he means like a literal sort of messenger of Satan, or we think it was more a piece of weakness. So some say it was, Paul suffered from an eye ailment. Some say it was depression. Some say it was worry. I mean, who knows what it is. Mm-hmm. But 3 times he prays to God, God, take it away. And God responds by saying this. He says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. All right. Now that's the classic translation of this. This is going somewhere, by the way. My grace is sufficient for you, God says to Paul, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Now, in this book, Marva Dawn questions that translation of it. And she does it on the basis of the fact that there's no personal pronoun before strength. So we don't know if it's talking about God's strength or Paul's strength in Greek. Okay. And then secondly, the word that we translate, my power is made perfect, is translated everywhere else in the New Testament as my power is brought to its end. So she says the better translation is my grace is sufficient for you, for strength is brought to its end in weakness. Now, so because there's no personal pronoun there, her argument is, well, God's strength is never brought to its end, so it's got to be talking about Paul's strength. So here's how she retranslates the verse. And I'm not doing her argument justice. I mean, it's really well done. Here's how she retranslates it. She says, let me find it here. She says, my grace, God says to Paul, all right, according to her translation, my grace is sufficient for you, for your power is brought to its end in weakness. Mm-hmm. In other words, instead of my power is shown in your weakness, it's your power is brought to its end in weakness. And the implication is, therefore, mine now will be shown. In other words, weakness is necessary to see God's power. Right. Now, and then what she does is she just shows how many hundreds of examples from the Bible of God using human weakness rather than human strength. Yeah. So here's Gideon, right? He's taken on an army of 50, 75,000
like
Midians.
The best story.
Right. And we just think it's a cute Sunday school story. Well, so Gideon's got over 30,000 people, so and ridiculous. God goes, man, too much. He gets him down to 300 people. Yeah. And he says specifically, here's why, so that you don't think you did this.
Right. And this was but after they won. Like, I mean, right? Because that's the order, like, because he threw the battle, like, up until the point where they're, like, Gideon walked into it with tons of faith and being like, I have no idea how this is going to go. You know, because it was like, and then.
With 300, as
with
opposed
300.
to, yes.
And didn't they give him, did they give him instruments? Was that right? Like, it was actually.
That was Jericho.
That was Jericho, that's right.
Well, no. I mean, but Jericho's another example.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to have you take this city by marching around it for 7 days, chanting, and then you're going to blow shofar on the 7th day, and the city will be yours.
The city will be.
Hey, I'm going to take the father of the Jewish nation is going to be founded on an elderly couple who could not have children, and even if they could, they were past childbearing age. I'm going to choose them. Right. I'm going to, in a culture that always valued the oldest child, I'm always going to choose the younger for my purposes.
I never caught that.
Always.
Okay.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm going to always choose the weakest, the smallest, the frailest to do my best work through. Mm-hmm. All right. So her translation fixes and better pictures that nuance. Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. Why? Because your power is brought to its end in weakness. Now, a big question is, how come we don't see much of God's power in the American church? And the answer, according to Dawn, would be because we make so much of our own. Yeah, we're so fixated on our strength that we never show weakness. You follow pastors on social media and they're never showing you weakness. It's always one spiritual high after another, so stoked for that. And you follow churches on social media and it's just nothing but awesome and amazing and life transforming, and you're just like, well, no wonder people get disillusioned, because the church is making promises that it cannot deliver on unless it's in large adrenaline fueled environments. Yeah. Our lives are not spent in large adrenaline-fueled environments, right? We're not euphoric people.
How many of you bought a product from Walmart that absolutely blew your mind?
Yes. Every time.
Every time.
Every time. I love Walmart.
But man, when I look at their marketing, I'm thinking, hey, that place has got it.
Yeah.
Walmart?
But that's the picture I'm painting. It's this corporation mindset of like presenting all of the value through this other kind of lens. And then when you go and actually experience what's happening and you take the product home and you work with it, you're like, gosh, this thing's a piece of junk.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It's just kind of like part of my whole breakdowns too, is just like the corporatization of like church versus, all of that's a whole other analogy I can go into. But.
So when we are showing nothing but strength and everything's polished, every story has a red bow, every service ends on a really high building, whoa, yeah, that was awesome, and every sermon's got to be amazing, and what we've done there. I mean, can God use it? Well, of course, he uses me. He can use anything. Mm-hmm. But what we've done there is we've squeezed out what God himself says he's most interested in using. Mm-hmm. Not human sinfulness, right? He can use that, but human weakness. So here's Paul limping along, right, with this thorn in his flesh, saying, remove it, remove it, remove it. And God said, no, it's exactly that I'm using then to multiply, my renown, my gospel, my whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And so when we've fallen in love with efficiency, control, production, and there's no room for weakness in our pastors, weakness in our speakers, weakness in our worship leaders, no room for doubt, no room for lament, no room for grieving, no room for silence, no room for awkward pauses, no room for messy stories. What you've just done is you've said, okay, it's just beautiful people here. It's just, and it's death.
Yeah,
it's death.
Weakness is for small groups.
That's right. And small churches.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think is when you hear that?
Yeah, it just, it makes me really sad. I mean, like, I think it's so beautiful that God just, like, wants to use our weakness. Like, that, I don't know, that takes so much pressure off of me of feeling like I have to have it all together. Yeah. And be strong and, like, be perfect. And I think churches are just setting this bar where you have to be like this, and there's this standard, and it's impossible. And there's so much hype around everything, and then you get desensitized to the hype, and then you're like, well, what about about every day? What about Monday? Like, what do I do when there's no hype around me, and social media is telling me that everyone else's life is better, and it'll get you. Yes. Or if you went to a different community of faith, it'd be more epic. Because or whatever. Grass is always greener. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, and it's incredible when churches fall apart all of a sudden because the leaders show some sign of weakness. Totally. Because what it's like is that hard thing is like, is that on the people or is that on the leader?
Oh, it's the system, baby.
It's the whole system because it's because.
We just had a very famous Nashville pastor resign abruptly because he's exhausted.
Yeah.
Well, we've built a system where the whole thing rests on one big personality, and if that personality tanks, well, then the thing's tanking.
Yeah.
And it's just such a bummer.
Yeah.
Because when is this guy most qualified to pastor? If it's not a sin issue, right? If it's not a moral issue,
right.
He's actually most qualified now.
Yeah.
And if it were a moral issue, I mean, think about the people that do some of the best theological work in the Bible. They're the deniers of Jesus, the murderers of Christians, the adulterous king, who murders Uriah, Bathsheba's husband. I mean, So there's a sense in which when people get knocked out of whatever perfect scenario, they kind of become more qualified. Yeah. Because now they're limping.
Yeah.
But it's exactly at that point that we cut them off and remove them. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm saying that there should be seasons. If somebody's marriage is blown apart because of choices they had made, then they need time away.
Yeah.
But I've always thought, if Jesus can restore Peter, who denied him 3 times, and then Peter goes on to have this amazing but humble ministry, you kind of go, well,
in like 50 days.
Right.
It's not years of
Right.
like reconciliation and restoration.
Right.
I mean, it's like within like 3 months.
Right. And I'm not saying that shouldn't, if somebody abuses somebody, I mean, I'm not getting into any of that. I'm just saying it's interesting to me, Izzy, based on what you were saying, that the people who would be the best at being weak are the people who were never, so this guy, this Nashville pastor, I'm actually more interested in hearing him now than I ever was before, about it, because here's his big church and here's the great story and here's the beautiful people. Okay, that's all same. Why we love train wrecks because we are them, and secondly because out of them we begin to listen. Right? Now somebody has something to say. I was just reading a book this week where in China, if you've not been in prison for your faith, it doesn't matter how great you are; they don't trust you.
Yeah,
it's almost like seminary for us is prison for them.
Yeah,
So
right.
crazy.
It's like it's qualifying. So we just don't, as American churches, at least the ones I'm familiar with, and they're all of the megachurch variety, and I love them. I mean, I'm part of them. This is a lover's critique. This is when I sit down every anniversary and say to my wife, "What can I do to be a better husband?" And she always answers. She always has answers for that. She's never said, "No, you're great." She always has answers.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this first thing that John has said, I think there's something to that, or maybe our quest for relevance and excellence and beauty. It's just a reflection of our Hellenistic culture. It's just a reflection of our American values of awesome.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, as we have this little community now, I'm speaking to like the smallest crew I've ever spoken to in my pastoral ministry. And I actually love it and find it very liberating, because it's not the focal point.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the thing. And God has very often said to me, "Listen, I know you hate being overweight, but I actually don't mind it. I know you hate being depressed and anxious. I actually don't mind that for you." And I'm not saying it's from God. I'm just saying the more tender I am and the more aware of my own limitations and weaknesses, the more there seems to be this corresponding like increase in what God can do. And that's what we miss out on.
Yeah.
That's what we miss out on.
Yep.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, how much time are we in, Andy Bear?
38.
What?
Let's go.
All right. All right, that was number one.
That was
Yeah.
a big one. That's kind of a big one.
You speak in a foreign tongue. Now, he means, of course, you use Christianese is kind of our way of saying it. He says, "Church, you talk and talk and talk, but you do so using a dead language. You're holding on to dusty words that have no resonance in people's ears, not realizing that just saying those words louder isn't the answer. All the religious buzzwords that used to work 20 years ago no longer do. This spiritualized insider language may give you some comfort in an outside world that is changing, but that stuff's just lazy religious shorthand, and it keeps regular people at a distance. They need you to speak in a language they can understand. There's a message there we're sharing, but it's hard to hear above your verbal pyrotechnics. People don't need to be dazzled with big churchy words and about eschatological frameworks and theological systems. Talk to them plainly about love, joy, forgiveness, death, peace, God, and they'll be all ears. Keep up the church speak, and you'll be talking to an empty room soon." All right, what do you guys think? Initial responses.
It's so funny because like when he's talking about relatable or like buzzwords from like 20 years ago, I wasn't born, so it's like,
Oh, good Lord.
I know, I'm sorry.
Good
but
Lord.
What's the buzzwords now?
I don't know, but I just mean like if you're trying to like reach people that are like my age, we just don't know what you're talking about. I mean I do because I grew up in church, so
How
like
about Rick
I understand.
Springfield? Duran.
I
How
mean
about those
I understand
buzzwords?
those,
Okay.
but
All right.
but I mean that's just like a practical thing of like, hey, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about because we weren't alive.
Yes. Thank you for that millennial reminder that the rest of us are ancient.
Right.
You're welcome.
But there's something else you're saying there that I really like as opposed to the other stuff. That in the scriptures, Paul was very attentive to using language his audience would understand.
Yeah.
So when he's preaching at a synagogue, well, he's quoting the Torah, right? He's arguing from the scriptures, Jesus Messiah. But then there are a couple of times when he's speaking to Greeks, and he's quoting their prophets and their poets, and you're just like, okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
When you look at the speeches in Acts, Peter, if he's speaking to Jerusalem, he'll speak one way. If he's speaking at Cornelius's house, who was a Gentile, God-fearer, he's speaking a different way. And so there's something to be said for words that make plain what it is that we're talking about. Because I'm a fan of big words. I mean, I'm guilty as charged in this, and I have to constantly remind myself not to use because eschatological is one of my favorite words.
Yeah. Well, there's two, and there's two things he's actually pointing out. So there's a combination of like culturally fluffy kind of words that are used commonly in churches that it's like, well, that doesn't even mean anything. And then there are very complex scholarly words that mean a ton, but they don't translate. They don't translate.
Okay.
So there's kind of this balance between the two, because like you can get up there and talk about, you know, how you're really about having an authentic ministry, or you know, our goal is to really come around you and pour into your life, and like, you know, we just want to make sure that we're running with a transparent faith. I mean, it's just, you see that, it's like, I'm just like, that's just a bunch of bull.
Fluffy.
Yeah, you know, so it's, and then there's of course like incredibly scholarly, heavily stuff that's taught, and then
eschatological,
and then that becomes burdensome, because then it makes you feel like, well, if I don't get this, how am I ever supposed to like be engaged with God, or how am I ever supposed to be engaged with who Jesus is? So there's like this hard swing I see in types of churches, kind of between those two things.
Do you think that's why people are leaving? Because it feels like a foreign country? Because part of what we're saying out of point one is it should feel like a foreign country. Yeah. But point two is, well, don't make it too foreign. So how do you carry that?
People like to go to foreign countries when the experience is translatable.
Okay.
Like if it's not about like because there's conflict in words and language in order to have communication and conversation. But when someone is standing on, you know, in front of the West Wall, you know, in Jerusalem, and taking it in and looking around them and developing the visual context and the aesthetic of the experience, well, then that outer world experience becomes meaningful. So it's just kind of the thing is, though, is that our modern churches are so doctrinal preaching, word teaching types of churches.
Not all of them,
but it's like what he's saying is, though, is so much of what churches become is hinged on that thing. Right. So like the deeper experience that exists for most humans is often just completely stripped and removed away from it. And then it feels like you can't even come, it becomes non-approachable.
It is?
Yeah.
No, go ahead. No, go.
Yeah, I just think like...
Okay, we know that 20 years ago you were not...
I'm not going to say that again.
Okay. All right, that's good.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think there needs to be a balance between all those things, and like we need to be able to have like real authentic conversations and feel like we understand what's happening, but also like we're being... I mean, I want to be challenged, like when I go to church too, and hear things that I don't understand, and I want to learn and I want to grow. And I think that's something that people my age want, but they do want to be able to feel like they're actually having a real conversation that they can be a part of, you know?
So it's not so much the words, it's their context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I'm hearing you say, hey, because I believe this. I've seen and I've been a part of churches that had lots of young people, and it wasn't like we were, you know, doing 3 points of, you know, here's how to have a better marriage. I mean, we were into deep stuff, but it felt real. It felt like it was a real conversation. It felt like it was a real expression. So maybe it's not the words as much as in the context of number one, the show. Yeah. The words can just feel like, you know, and I feel like from worship leaders, there's this worship, you know, voice that people use, and there are all these words. Hey, we know you come, you know, from all kind of different places this week, and we're just gonna step into God's presence.
Make this your prayer today.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know, it's all the sameness. It's all the lack of imagination. Mm-hmm. You know, there's not a richness to our words. So there's this bland sameness that you're calling fluff. Mm-hmm. There's the too deep that doesn't translate. But then but I hear you as he's saying, no, there's a place for the deep.
Yeah.
But it's got to be framed in something other than show.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, but it goes back to your point with Paul. Paul had the ability to take people to that depth. Mm-hmm. So, but it starts with a huge awareness to the reality of the room. Yeah. In the context of who's
Jesus,
coming in.
I mean, and Jesus. Hey, Kingdom of God's like a pearl. Kingdom of God likes treasure hidden in a field. Kingdom of God is like a farmer sowing seed. The kingdom of God, is like virgins waiting for their bridegroom. Kingdom, he's just doing nothing but using cultural images to speak relevantly. That's good. So it's not a deep or shallow thing as much as it is a contextual. Have we contextualized? So that's one of the buzzwords: contextual, missional.
Yeah.
And I'm so guilty of this whole thing. I'm so guilty. All right, number 3. Your vision can't see past your building. Ooh.
I got a verse for this one.
What do you got?
I got hold on, different tab. I was following along.
Oh.
Okay. I got Amos chapter 5, 21 through 24.
All right, let me hear it.
Does that spark? Okay.
Yeah, it does. I know.
So this transitions from the message. So
of course it is.
It
because
totally,
you're liberal.
Right. So it says, I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religion projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes, your public relations, and image making. I've had all I can take of your noisy ego music. When was the last time you sang to me? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all I want.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I think Eugene Peterson sounds a lot like God. and looks and I think looks like a lot like God.
Looks like him too.
So perhaps no, but that is an interesting thing, because all throughout the prophetic literature of the Hebrew Scriptures, you have these very clear, hey, I'm not interested in your offerings, your prayers, your sacrifices, your convocation, your new moon celebrations, if it's not accompanied by justice, if it's not accompanied by, and so when you talk about worship in the Bible, God talks more about the worship he hates than the worship he wants. And worship devoid of justice, which is just an expression of love of neighbor. Don't get hung up on justice. Yeah. It's just love of neighbor. That God's not interested in love of God divorced from love of neighbor. And it's just that simple, and it's that consistent. And so this, I think that gets exactly to his point here. He says, the coffee bar, the cushy couches, the high-tech lights, the funky children's wing, and the uber-cool teen center are all top-notch and costly. In fact, most of your time, money, and energy seems to be about luring people to where you are instead of reaching people where they already are. Rather than simply stepping out into neighborhoods around you and partnering with the amazing things already happening and the beautiful stuff God is already doing, you seem content to franchise out your particular brand of Jesus stuff and wait for the sinful world to beat down your door. Your greatest mission field is just a few miles or feet off your campus, and you don't even realize it. You want to reach the people you're missing? Leave the building. Now, so he's going at a couple things here that I think are interesting. One is the come to me approach that really emphasizes the show. The reason we do the show is because it's a come to me approach, right? In Uber number 2 lingo, it's attractional. The attractional model of the church is if we make church attractive enough, people will come. And to some degree, that's true, and that does work. And part of what Israel was to be an attractive people to the nations, that they would demonstrate how good it is to live under the rule of God, and that the nations would be attracted to that. Absolutely. So is there a place? Of course there is. And does God use that? Of course he does. This isn't better or worse as much as it is what is the most intentional way to be the church in this day and age. If we're going to put our forms kind of back up for discussion, and we have this very narrow imagination, what this individual is saying is, very often the church is so focused about the building, which is theologically lame, right? Because church is never, it's never a building, it's a people. And so when we make it about buildings, of course, we've made it about the wrong things. And I've been a part of 3 building campaigns, so I've done this. But I've really changed my view on it, and I've been wrong about it, because if and this is just me speaking as a somebody who's made all of these screw ups, but the podcast thing has really taught me differently. So when I was at a church called EV Free Fullerton, we did 3 services, and at those 3 services, maybe 4,000, 3,800 people would show up. And then you'd have another 1,000 people live stream, and then a couple other 1,000 would podcast. And so let's say on a month, you're talking to 7,000 or 8,000 different people. And to do that,
And we might say maybe it's the same 7,000 or 8,000 people every month.
right,
Right.
exactly.
It's not new 8,000 the next
Correct.
month.
Correct.
Make that clear.
And to do that, we had a close to $10 million, $9 million budget. We had 20 acres of land and all sorts of stuff. And hallelujah, those are great resources. But the podcast thing has been the flipping of that script entirely. So Andy's telling me we've got however many dozens of thousands of downloads a month.
Yeah, we're transparent. We did 38,000 downloads last month.
Yeah.
And then we've been we've trended up to that, and we've averaged
Because-
around 30 plus,
which
since
makes
the past
us
4 months.
really important. It makes it,
Hardly.
according to number one,
Hardly.
that makes us kicking butt.
Right.
Now
the Harry Potter one, on the other hand,
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
I don't
killing
wanna-
us.
I don't wanna
Killing
know
us.
their
Oh,
numbers.
man.
So we're a large small fry in the world of podcasting. But here's the point: how much does it cost to do a podcast? $1,000? By the time we get all
maybe we've spent $1,000, and that's on kind of middle of the road
Stuff.
stuff.
right, and people have donated to it. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's. And where do people listen to podcasts? Well, they listen to them in their car, at the gym, working, doing errands, and you're like, you get to be in their world. That's why I'm always saying here, man, thank you for letting us be in your world.
Yeah.
Because and so you just go, wow, what a misuse of resources. Now you can't, there's still a reason to gather, because podcast is a
Right.
community, podcast isn't corporate worship, podcast isn't the sacraments. I mean, there's still, if all churches are teaching centers, then podcasts could replace them. But churches are never that. But it's interesting to me how much it's like Uber, it's like Airbnb. We flipped out of the most innovative companies don't own anything. They just facilitate things that are already there.
Yeah.
And so if I were ever going to own property again, I'd never want to own a church building. I'd want to own common use property that the church then subleases out on Sundays or whenever they're meeting.
Right.
I'd want to own a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
Because of course, because I need it. I'd want to own a community center. I'd want to own some cool sort of restaurant type bar thing.
Right.
Whatever. I mean, whatever it would be.
Well, and it's funny you say community center, though, because I think that's where a lot of this entire model became a flip at one point in time. Because in the 50s and 60s, churches largely felt like community centers.
Correct.
They were a bit more
That's right.
outreaching
That's
to
right.
the local neighborhoods and how they function. But now it's become about our own little neighborhood we built for ourselves that
Right.
we all partake of, and it's not
That
directly
pulls
related.
us out. Yeah. So why would you
Yeah.
have a coffee shop when you should be encouraging your people to go to the coffee shops all around them, build
Right.
relationships, be Jesus people? Why
Right.
would you have a restaurant when, hey, we should be using all the restaurants? And so I think there's something to this in the sense of I've been a part of, and we may raise money in the future for needs that we have, in the rental we're in. And so I'm not opposed to that at all. I think there is a minimum standard of safety and communication that you need. I just wonder if it is what it is.
Right.
What
you have to
what
always
it's
stop
become.
and evaluate if the resources are actually benefiting what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And I think that's what largely this article is saying, is that all the while these resources begin to fund a what. And
Right.
that big what is the thing in question.
The preservation of
Right.
the institution.
Yeah, exactly. So
Giant
it's
bubble.
yeah.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. So instead of so you want to be both. You want to be a come and see, and we do. We want to create a space where people don't have to jump through the normal subculture hoops to be a part of our community. But we also want to be a community that is out in the real world, dealing with real people and being normal.
Mm-hmm.
And we're Jesus people, absolutely, first and foremost, but we want to be good friends and good neighbors and good consumers.
Mm-hmm. And the kind of, I think the challenge that we've presented with people is that we don't do all these other expected ministries that every other church is doing. It's kind of like, listen, we're actually making your calendar open to go be normal people. To not try to sell you on all these different micro events we're doing because you're a guy, so you need a guy's thing, and you're a girl, so you need a girl's thing. And
that's the temptation, right?
Because that's temptation.
That's what people want.
Right.
All right, how long we got?
55.
Okay, we're done.
Whoa.
You get final closing thoughts so far in this
Oh,
conversation?
this number 5 is so good. Are we going to do a part 2, you think?
Dude,
Well, we're going to have to.
Okay.
Like 4 and
All right.
5 are really good.
Yeah, they are. Okay.
All right. So what do you got, Izzy? Come on.
man,
What?
I don't know. I think it's good that more and more people are talking about this. Like,
Why?
I have noticed a lot more people, just even in like my circle of friends, like we've been talking about a lot of this kind of stuff. A lot of like, hey, we're tired of this not being real and authentic, and we want people to be transparent in a world of social media where you're constantly putting your best foot forward and not showing who you really are. I think people are like ready for a transition in things, and I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's fun to be a part of something that is actively trying to be transparent with people.
Why have you not given up on the church?
I don't know. I just couldn't bring myself to do that. I thought about it, but I don't know. I think I was like missing community too much, community of people too much. When I wasn't at church, I just was kind of lonely, you know?
Yeah.
I'm kind of awkward, so I didn't have a lot of friends.
But you have pets.
I do. Yeah, I have pets.
How many pets do you have?
I have a dog and a cat.
And wow. And the dog's name is?
Croissant.
Oh, good Lord. And I hesitate even to ask this
I
next
know,
question.
I'm surprised.
Cat's name?
Norman.
Oh.
It's not as bad.
No, it's awful. The whole thing
okay.
is awful.
That's rude.
When you turn 21,
Yes.
you will be forced to make a choice between Andy and me.
Oh,
And
yes, I've heard.
yes, so I just want you to be praying about that.
You know, I think I'm just going to go with wine instead of the beer option.
Okay.
I like that dimension.
So follow Jesus.
We've entered
Yeah.
another dimension.
So
Yeah.
follow Jesus on the wine
Right.
bit. Okay. All right. That's a little too spiritual for us.
It's so much like the blood of the cross that how could you not always want to experience that?
Let me tell you right now. This is when I knew Izzy was our girl. So Izzy gets up, and she plays an Emmylou Harris song. And what's the name of the song again?
It's called All My Tears.
All My Tears. It is unbelievable how good that song is. And then we did this thing. We did a lament thing, and you'd written a song called Still Hope.
Yeah.
And that you played, and it was just like, oh my goodness. And so one of the things we love about Izzy, and this is a plug for Izzy and her music, is, here's a 20-year-old young woman who is reaching into some really, really deep stuff beyond the normal sort of worship sounding sorts of things, but it's just unbelievably good, and it's because it's beyond the kind of normal imaginings and forms of kind of what we do. It's just so powerfully heard, right? Because who else is doing Emmylou Harris in a church service? Maybe somebody is, but wow, was that so good? And so
Portland, probably.
Yeah.
yeah, the entire city,
The entire city. All the churches up there are doing
Yeah,
that.
that's okay, though.
Okay, well they'll lead the way. They will
Good.
lead the way.
They are.
So anyway, check out Izzy Ray's stuff. We're obviously not having her on to plug her stuff, but her stuff is really, really good. And so one of the ways she's blessed our community has been just through her being herself, which has been phenomenal. Reminder, of course, that we have 2 podcasts now, and we're working on a third. More details to come about that. The first one is this one. So this is the Subversive Kingdom one that's going to go to voxpodcast.com here, that Andy's now moved to SoundCloud.
You can plan for that in about a month.
In
about a month, kind of once we close out this year,
Yeah.
we're going to do a big switch.
We have a 1-year 50th episode special that we've not yet
Extravaganza.
planned. Yep.
Yep.
That we've not yet planned, but it will be epic.
Yeah, there's ideas all over the place.
Right.
We're excited about it. But we'll talk about it. We'll kind of mention it each episode to let you guys know, because I can't, there's like one big thing I can't test without doing it live. So I'm just hoping it doesn't break when it happens.
Okay, I
so
like that.
there may need to be a little bit of polishing as we jump into it.
Yeah,
But
so give us feedback on it for sure. Don't if you can't download anything, you guys are always great about doing that. Andy at voxoc.com. Or Andy Bear. No, not really. That should be the one.
that won't go anywhere.
Brown Eyes.
Hello.
Andy Brown Eyes. Hello.
Yeah.
At Vox Podcast.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that is. and croissant at izzyray.com.
Send us a nice.
And then the second podcast we have is the actual stories and the scripture, the Jesus beautiful piece from our weekly thing. Our little
Vox Community Podcast.
Vox Community. That's what it's
called. Hard time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Vox Community Podcast. That's what I was looking for. So if you want to, both of those are on iTunes, and our website is voxoc.com for the local. We have folks that will bop in from. We call them podrissioners. Another church calls them podrissioners. I love that. So we'll steal that. And so if you ever want to stop by and say hi, we'd love to see you. As always, we are thrilled to be a part of your life. We really are. And we're so grateful for all the feedback you give us, positive, negative. We look at all of it, and some gets disregarded, some gets put in a to talk about later pile. And then the positive stuff I frame in my office, and not really. So may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you. May he be gracious to you. May he lift up his face to you, and may he give you peace today. Thanks as always for tuning in. Till next time.
Thanks for listening to Vox, the Mike Erre podcast. Be sure to like Mike on Facebook at facebook.com/official Mike Erre. Follow Mike on Twitter and Periscope at Mike Erre for live interaction and ongoing Q&A. Don't forget to visit subversivekingdom.com for further engagement and information about Mike.